What's going on, everyone? Justin again. As always, thanks for watching my channel. Welcome back. Cheers to those of you that have your beers. Tomorrow's Friday, TGIF Eve, okay? What are we talking about tonight? Tonight I'm going to talk about something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. I'm going to talk about, and I want you guys to share your opinion with me down in the comments for 2 things. One, this is the primary reason for this discussion topic. Would you rather work on an old car or a new car? Specifically an old POS, which was what I was going to say. Because let me tell you something, from my old guys out there, you're probably going to tell me old school muscle car, the cars were simpler, yada yada. And a lot of my newer guys be like, nah, screw that. You know, no one wants to deal with points and all the rust and crud and having to deal with setting timing, this, that, and the other. I'd much rather have something newer. And I might even have some of those that are in like the 80s, 90s kind of realm where they were really excited about that. And that's what they actually worked on throughout their automotive career. But a reason why I bring this up is because you guys already know, I've had my fair share time at the dealership. And I've had about equal, if not longer, time over here at the independent shop. So to fill you in on my background, if you guys don't already know, I've got about 3 years of experience working on a new car dealership, which was Chrysler. So I dealt with Jeep, Dodge, Ram, you name it, I touched it. And things just seem more simple, even though there was more and nuts and bolts, more fasteners, and in some situations tighter spaces. Everything just kind of like, even the wiring harnesses, they just fall right into place, right? A little bit, you know, kind of a pain in the butt, if you will, to pull certain electrical connectors off, but for the most part, pretty easy peasy. And there's a lot of different little flat rate tricks to getting something done just a little bit faster, and because some of them are still so new with being in within that 10-year, even 15-year time stamp, really, because we never really saw anything that was like OBD1, and if we did, we didn't really put a lot of value in working on them at the dealership. Most of the cars that we took in were at least 98 or newer, okay? So for us, it was relatively easy. We didn't have to run into a lot of the situations that I've been running into as of lately. Now let's start talking about some of these old cars. Some of you guys say, man, old cars are the easiest to work on because there's so much space inside and underneath the engine bay, and you have so few things to take off of like the transmissions, and you don't have all this extra stuff. Yeah and no, okay? Because I've ran into situations, this 87 Cadillac that I'm working on right now, that I'm just doing a long block swap, right? Just changing out pans and stuff. Must have had at least 2 or 3 inches of built up grease and oil and, you know, nuts and bolts that are not their original ones that don't even really fit, or some that are cross thread, so I have to re-tab holes or do helicoils, brackets that just don't seem to make sense really because they had tons of brackets. How about the umpteen hundred vacuum lines? And not just on this Cadillac, how about with like Nissan and Honda and Toyota and Mitsubishi? I mean, they had vacuum lines for days in the 80s and even early 90s when they were still trying to convert over from OBD1 to OBD2. It was ridiculous. And the amount of rust, okay? And I know I don't live in the Rust Belt, but I still deal with my fair share of rust from vehicles that have moved here from the Rust Belt. And in those situations, these Marines, they'll pick up these used cars off of Craigslist thinking they're getting a killer deal. And we had this, late 80s or early 90s Mitsubishi Montero come in. Had an exhaust leak, right, coming from the downpipe coupler, wanted to change a gasket out. Ran into a situation where there was no way to extract one of the studs that was in the manifold. And it looked like they just had a head job done not too long ago. So he goes ahead and approves us to go ahead and change the manifold out or pull the manifold in order to get the stud out. Only thing is, I go to soak this thing down with PB Blaster, and as I'm flashlighting it and spraying it, there's a bolt missing. So I stick the bore scope down there and take a look, and the bolt is broke clean off in this head that looks like it was just put on not too long ago. Now this is a Marine that picked this thing up for 500 bucks. Hey, for, you know, 80 bucks to toss in a gasket, why wouldn't I have somebody fix it? Until you get now down to where you might have to do a head job. And you're not prepared to spend, let's just say, and I'm spitballing here, okay, because I don't do the numbers, but let's say it cost $1,500, maybe even $2,300 to do the head job, right? Do the whole thing, plus time, labor, and parts. He just bought a $500 car because it was a $500 car. There's probably a reason why he bought that $500 car, because he probably didn't want to make takeout payments at some used car shark, lot, or he didn't want to go to a new car dealership. Maybe he's got bad credit. So he decides to save a few bucks, take dad's opinion into consideration, buy something and pay it off, and then fix what needs to be wrong with it. Now he's got to be invested over 4 times of what the car is even worth. Okay, this car probably not even worth $1,000. Now you got to make the overall decision of this POS that you just picked up. What do you do with it now? Do you eat the bullet, pay for the repair, hopefully, get it back within a timely manner, or not? Let's go back to the Cadillac for a second. So we order some engine mounts from O'Reilly's. They come in. What a pain in the butt. Okay, these bolts are inside and tucked into the frame where the lower control arm goes. And I have a 15mm flex head that I can hold on to with a pry bar and then holding it like this, because there's no room for your fingers, and I have to have somebody else gun the nut off. Fine, whatever. Pain in the butt, got it done. Got this mount off. Looked like I had to take a carbide bit to it to hog the hole out because the hole was too tight. Did so, put it back on. Hole doesn't even line it up. I would have to hog it out and oblong it into a weird shape and hope that it worked. No, now I'm taking 3/4 of the metal off. There's no way it's going to line up. So now the engine can't go back in until we order new mounts, and hopefully those mounts line up. So this comes back to my previous point, and prove me wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, or you guys can tell me whether you like working on old cars or new cars better. But I found when it comes to aftermarket parts, when it comes to the older cars, they just never seem to pan out. They just never seem to be made to where it matches up, and you go through different companies until hopefully you find a close match, okay? So that's the headache. And then having to reroute all these different hoses that somebody else has already done. This Cadillac had hoses for days, didn't even make sense. You look at the emission label, which is gone, but you go to the All Data, you look it up, it doesn't even have half the amount of tie-ins and splices this guy had going on. So what a nightmare, okay? Now let's talk about new cars real quick, and then I'm gonna ask you one more question. So with new cars, everything's pretty much bolt on, bolt off, and most aftermarket parts that you order for it bolt right up to it. You don't really have a lot of issues with matching it up to where it goes. The only time I've ever seen anything kind of weird with an aftermarket part, and I think it comes down to their parts, was I was putting in this, was a Murray radiator, okay? And it was just a little bit too long and a little bit too tall for the core support and the frame, so we had to send it back and get a different one. That was pretty much the only time. But when it comes to everything else pretty much bolts on and bolts off. Now you got some other issues that do take place for both sides. So with new cars and old cars, when it comes down to computers or mass airflow sensors or idle air control valves, sometimes you just get a bad part. And sometimes your diag guy has to jump through hoops and bounds to re-diagnose something, and it all comes back to the same conclusion that that aftermarket part was just built as junk. So that does happen too. I find that I have more problems with older vehicle repairs than I do the more modern vehicle repairs. I lose my ass on time, and that hurts the shop. And then of course you get the weird looks too, especially if it's happening over and over. Your hours are sliding, Yeah, because I keep running into all these nightmare old car repairs. With newer cars, it just seems like beep, beep, beep. It's in, it's off, and I'm out the door and I can beat the time. But with this older stuff, when you're tapping, when you're drilling, when you're having to extract, when the parts don't match up, when you have to wait a day or 2 days for it to come in, it's an absolute time killer. It's a shop killer. This thing will kill the money that you make at the shop. That's my 2 cents. My last question for you guys. So again, prove me wrong, let me know. Would you rather work on old cars or new cars? But the second question I have is, would you rather own an older car or a newer car? Let me know down in the comments, because I'm sure you guys have a classic car already picked out that you just love to own. But would you modernize it, or would you keep it nostalgia and as is? And then, how easy or difficult would it be for you to get the parts for that? That's my question for tonight. If I had to guess, I think the majority of my subscribers here would say that they would rather work on new cars over old cars. That's just a guess. And I think the majority of my subscribers here would say that they would love to have an old school muscle car that they can just beef out. That would be my guess. That's all I got for this video. I hope you guys are enjoying your work week. We'll see you guys next time. Happy TGIF Eve. Deuces.